So welcome back to the continuing series on questions and answers that you have about buying and selling. But today I'm joined by Glyn, our mortgage advisor. Morning, Glyn.
Morning, Joanne.
So another question I get asked, Glyn, a lot is, what is a deposit?
Right, a deposit gets quite confusing for a lot of people. We look at the deposit quite often as being the amount of money or savings, whatever, that people have got to put into purchasing a property.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say there's a house going for sale for $1 million, with a nice round figure, pretty Auckland-like, and it's a first home buy. That's a big number for a first home buyer, isn't it? The minimum deposit on that they're going to need is a total of 10% in today's market. Now that can be made up in different ways. It can be made up of 5% of genuine savings, Kiwi saver, money in the bank account that they've genuinely saved over time. But it could also be made up of an additional amount of 5% perhaps gifted from parents. That seems to happen a lot these days, and that's entirely acceptable as far as the banking system is concerned. So that gives them 10% to go into the purchase, meaning they need to borrow 90%. Now that deposit, I actually call that equity input.
Right, okay.
That's their money available to go in to purchasing the property. It often gets confused with the deposit required on a sale and purchase agreement.
Yes.
Where there's a negotiation to buy a property, and quite often on those sale and purchase agreements, as a matter of course, 10% is required on going unconditional on that purchase.
Yep.
Now that's a deposit in relation to the contract.
Right.
Okay. I always say to people, you may not have that money in your bank account, so negotiate that deposit. And I say 5% is plenty. Let's face it, 5% on $1 million is, what is it, $50,000?
Right.
That's a lot of commitment, and that's usually enough as a deposit on a sale and purchase contract. So quite easily confused with the total equity or deposit required as far as the bank is required to make sure they've got enough money to put into the purchase. Does that make sense?
Look, it does, absolutely, but it is, as I say, a lot of confusion out there about, I've got a deposit for my house and I need to do a deposit for the sale and purchase agreement. Is it the same thing? Can it be the same thing? Can it come from the same fund? So look, it is a question that I get asked quite frequently and spend some time trying to explain, not quite as eloquently as you just did.
Well, we take a lot of time and effort over that to make sure that our clients, your clients, do get that right. Because there's no point in them getting it wrong, because that can lead to a lot of heartache when it comes to confirming the contract to buy the property and making it unconditional. If they haven't got that money available to pay the deposit on the contract, it can all fall over. Or they have to renegotiate, and that's stressful, and it's a very stressful process as it is anyway. So we make sure we hone in on that and give them advice about how big or small that deposit on the contract needs to be, but in any event it needs to be a certain size as far as the banking system is concerned to enable the bank to say yes to approving their finance. So that deposit or equity tends to be larger than the deposit necessarily on a sale and purchase agreement. Does that make sense?
Look, it does, absolutely, and I think that actually it's clearly answered the question about what is a deposit, and as you say, if we look at it as an equity input, it's actually completely different. It's confusing for, as you say, for clients. There's a deposit for getting a loan and there's a deposit to go on to a sales and purchase agreement. They are very different in terms of what they're used for, and you've clearly explained that, so thank you, Glyn.
You're welcome.
So Glyn, you've provided us with a great deal of information today. How would people get hold of you if they wanted to know more?
Sure. Well, Joanne, obviously they can get hold of you, and you know how to get hold of me, which is great. You're giving us some wonderful referrals over the years, which is fantastic for us. Get hold of me, Glyn Slade, My mobile number is 021 525 971. And you can get hold of me also, Slade Consulting at mx.co.nz, Mortgage Express that is for MX. So yeah, just get hold of me that way, and if in doubt, talk to Joanne.